Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 on, I will call the regular meeting of the Guilford Select Board to order, Monday, November 27th. Thank you all for being here, folks in the room and folks online. We need to see both, folks online, we need to see both your name. Thank you, Barry. We're all set. Okay, we're good to go. All right. We will start by having Rusty talk to us about the rules of procedure. Thank you.
The Select Board has a set of rules and procedures that are for all Guilford public meetings and are now shared with all committees and commissions. They are here in the chat online and published on the town website. These rules request that everyone present at the meeting conduct themselves in a civil manner. Tonight, individuals have a reasonable time to comment on actions the Select Board is considering. Comments and questions will inform the Select Board's decision-making process. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Comments will be heard, not responded to. There will be no exchange between the Select Board and a commenter. No questions will be responded to. Any questions will be recorded and responded to in a timely fashion. Additionally, here in the room and in the chat online, there is some basic information which includes how to contact Select Board members, how to secure a spot during the community comment portion of the meeting, how to get on the agenda, and how to communicate with the board via mail or email.
Thank you, Rusty. Thanks very much. And then we'll, I think as Ryan says, there's no community comment period this evening. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to say anything? Give you 3 minutes if there's anything you'd like to say to the community or the Select Board. Let's not just, thanks, Ryan, that's a good point, yeah. Okay, when we keep moving forward to changes to the agenda order, there are 2 changes we need to make this evening under new business. We're going to postpone, if the Select Board is comfortable, we need to postpone 2 aspects of the new business. C, personal payroll increases for fiscal year 25. I rather enthusiastically requested that be on the agenda, thinking that was something that we needed to oversee before the budget process is finished, and I since learned that it's not necessary. So that will be postponed as to part of the budget process rather than here, if the Select Board is comfortable. And then Steve Lemke came and said that he didn't need to do the FEMA update this evening, that can come later if people are comfortable with that. Are we all comfortable here in the room with just postponing those? Yes. Tara, I'll ask you, you're online, I'll ask you if you're comfortable, Tara, with postponing those. I don't think we need to take a motion or anything, but we can.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. All right, so those will be postponed to a later meeting or another situation. Postpone, changing the position. All right, we will move to updates and reports. Let's start first with our
minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm reading it right there. Approval of the minutes. I passed right over it. So we need to approve the minutes of the previous regular meeting of November 13th.
I so moved.
All right, thanks very much. Is there a second to that? All right, Rusty. Is there any discussion about the previous minutes?
Well done.
Well done. All right, we will need to take a person-by-person roll call vote this evening. So Tara, are you willing to approve those minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Rusty?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Veranda?
Aye.
And Zahn says aye. Thank you very much. Now, we'll move on to updates and reports, and I would like to turn it over to Erica.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Seems like such a short time since we last met. Since our last meeting, I have attended a meeting at the Windham County Sheriff's Office about regional policing, which I know that Sheila started the process, the conversation with Mark Anderson, the Windham County Sheriff's Office, earlier this year, like in February. It's been something that's talked about for a while. Mark seems like he's done a lot of research, and later in the meeting, we're going to have a letter of interest that Guilford can decide to send to Mark and copy Sarah Coffey in hopes that the legislature can get some draft legislation going to make more options available for regional policing for Wyndham County. So I can talk about that a little bit more later. We are continuing to do research and work on budgets for next year. The next budget workshop will be this Thursday at November 30th at 6:30 p.m. And the main focus of this budget workshop will be highway budgets. I went to a great event put together by Sarah Coffey, where somebody from Colin Bratton from Wyndham Regional Commission was there, members of our planning and energy commissions and committees were there, and Richard Amore from Housing and Community Development came to walk around Guilford and look at places where pedestrian and bike paths might be desirable. We talked about the bike and pedestrian study that has already been done, and Danny Zambreski came to talk about real world possibilities that he sees could happen as far as working along the sides of the road for that. And so that was really great. And Richard also reminded us that Guilford has 2 village centers, and having village center status can bring a lot of benefits, including funding opportunities. So that's something to think about throughout the coming year as some of those grant opportunities come up. I am, in addition to that, working along with Colin Bratton from Wyndham Regional to get a application filled out for municipal highway grant. It's not quite the same as the normal V-Trans grants that we kind of apply for by rote. So we'll talk about that later in the meeting too, but that's pretty cool, and Wyndham Regional is helping with that. We are continuing to gather information and reports for the town report for 2024 town meeting. It's coming right up. And one final note, based on a conversation we had maybe a couple weeks ago about some national election officials getting mailed some very scary and dubious packages, I did a really quick online training and got a package of Narcan to keep in the town office. So just so you all know, we're safe from opioid overdose for a moment in the town office. So that's it.
All right. I see that we're admitting, we're admitting Nanette to the call. Welcome, Nanette. We need to see both your first and last name on the screen, please, so that we can keep our records straight. So thanks very much. If you can use the 3 buttons on your personal screen there, your personal whatever that little box is, you can add your last name. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Dan is not here, so is there no report for that this evening? Let's then move on to BDCC. You want to come up?
Yep.
Yeah, come right on up.
How's that? Hi.
Nice to see you, Jen.
Nice to see you all.
Introduce yourself just to the camera.
Yes, I'm Jen Stromston. I'm from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and SeVEDS. And thank you, I know you have a full agenda, but I will also try not to talk too fast. We every year make a request of every town in the Wyndham region at about $3 a head. I say about because we decided not to adjust this ask by $3 based on the census, which in itself is a little bit dubious based on the kind of margin of error anyway. And for the census last year. And I will say in a couple of towns where the numbers are really messed up by COVID, we have gone with not the decennial census numbers, but that's not true in Guilford, but in some of the resort in the towns that have a very high number changes due to remote workers and things like that. It's been hard to figure out what's true. So one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to that I didn't bring copies for, but I will email and then you can share please with the public going forward, is that last year, prior to town meeting, there were a lot of questions about our financials because they are confusing because we are two organizations, right? We're Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, which sort of manages all the everything, including a bunch of real estate and also employs everybody. But then SeVEDS is really the organization that does regional strategic planning and research. And the easiest way that I find to explain it in some ways is every region in Vermont has a regional development corporation, and some of them do real estate, but they get about $100 and something thousand a year to do economic development, and that's a lot of like trying to make sure the biggest employers don't leave and kind of some fairly basic stuff, putting state programs on the ground, Vermont training program. And we are very different because we've intentionally grown ourselves based on the strategic planning. So starting about 10 or 15 years ago, sort of after some terrible winters, taking a look around and saying, could we make things better? Can we just are we gonna just let this happen to us? Are we gonna sort of figure out what's happening in terms of demographics and the economy and see what can be changed and what can be altered? And that is the spirit of SeVEDS. And SeVEDS has its own board, and it's people from around the region, and SeVEDS and BDCC sometimes have been in what I lovingly call dynamic tension, which I think is healthy. They're like the research and development arm, and BDCC is like the, we get the payroll done kind of arm. And so one of the exciting things, anyway, so a lot of times we get questions about the financials, and that's great because it is complicated in that we accept grants, and that's already complicated, but then we kind of keep them separate. And sometimes we show like revenue, a net gain. And that's on the SeVEDS side, it's important to know that our fiscal year and our grant years have almost nothing to do with each other. And so that's usually what accounts for us kind of having budgeting that seems a little bit out of whack, but it's because we're operating a lot of different calendars. And then the BDCC side, it's really because we have things like a $5 million roof to replace over the book press. And so we do, frankly, accumulate capital as we have to because that's our version of having capital reserves. And so, but to that point, it gave me a chance last year to create for Guilford Town Meeting a financials FAQ. So I'll leave one copy, but we've updated a little bit, and I'll give you I had it at town meeting, but I will send that to you to circulate digitally because it bears discussion. And yes, absolutely. We undergo a triple audit by the federal government, so I promise you our books are great. I don't even understand how that works, but thank God for Bobby Kilburn. There are a lot of just kind of stories and samples of what we do in our programming contained within the annual report. It's never comprehensive, but I think gives you a little bit of a taste of what we do. And that includes things like our high school programs. Really excited this year to have just had our reality fair in October, and we did finally get busloads of kids from Brattleboro High School. We've always had the Wyndham Regional Career Center kids, and Leland Gray kids and Quinn Valley kids and Bellows Falls kids, but we also got 3 busloads from UHS, which was terrific. So that's just one big event, but it also just kind of exemplifies what we're trying to do in that event. The kids come, we assign them an occupation that's slightly aligned with their interests, and they have to basically figure out things like their FICA from their paycheck, and all other things, and then what do they have to spend, and then they go around and they have to interact with lots of adults and figure out what kind of a home choice to make. Do I have roommates? Am I going to have a car? Am I going to bike to work? So they also get some life skills stuff. So this is just, it's a great one day that encapsulates work that we do all year round with the kids. And it's a program that is no longer funded through SeVEDS. It was launched with SeVEDS and other funding. So it gives you a sense of some of the stuff we can sort of take risks on and try doing. And now it has sustainable funding from a variety of entities. Another thing I want to draw your attention to in this is just that we try really hard to bring other money into the region, and not just for our programs, but we're to bring in money to programs that isn't otherwise available to other nonprofits, right? So that might be a private sector funder. We have some funding for the high school program from M&T Bank. That's from sort of their statewide giving, not sort of local giving. And so we really are mindful of trying not only compete, but also trying to be a facilitator of other funding. And so sometimes we're involved in projects like Friends of Vernon, Governor Hunt, or the Whitingham Infrastructure Project, because we're kind of helping with a tricky grant, right? Towns don't always have the capacity to handle yet another brand new federal thing like an earmark process or whatever. So sometimes we just provide capacity to those things because we're just trying to make sure the money gets spent here in the region. The other thing that I will highlight that we're just really excited about and having fun with is this Get On Board program, which once again, we're kind of leaning on the expertise of Guilford. You're contributing probably more than you're getting out of it directly right now, but the program was launched with the spirit of, boy, we need more people to join committees and boards and people to gain confidence in that. And so we did some preliminary surveys, and then we ran a session at our May summit where 50-something people got into groups and talked about like what's working, what's not working, how do we do a better job of engaging people and training people and getting them involved. And then we took all of that and have done it's a 4-part series where people spend the better part of a Saturday with folks like amazing town moderators and super talented facilitators and people from the best of the state organizations like your Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We're just bringing it into the region and making it really accessible for folks who want to sort of stick a toe in and go to the next level in terms of like local volunteering. So that's going super well. That has 30-something people doing really what is kind of a big commitment. And we plan to do that again. It's been a great experiment, and so I think I will leave it at that. There's a lot of information. We send out, a town impact report. There's all sorts of stuff on our website, and I'm happy to answer questions, and also to be, contacted offline about anything.
Great,
Ever.
thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Jen? I'm comfortable.
Oh, I was just curious, when you were talking about increasing capacity to respond to grants, does your organization have a relationship with the regional planning, with Wyndham Regional?
Yeah, I mean, we're, in some places they're combined agencies. And those areas tend to do less economic development, tends to be, kind of, not, I wouldn't say subsumed, but so it's great that we're independent, but we also are and need to be in touch all the time. And so kind of an example of this is recently Weston experienced flooding. Weston is part of the region, even though it's in Windsor County. And so, the regional commission is very involved in roads being replaced and coordinating with the state, but we also have different relationships with entities there. And some of that has to do with, we often are the folks doing the relief programs. So like during pandemic, we did relief programs that were both for nonprofits and businesses. And so during this most recent flood, the only money that was available was for businesses, but we're doing that. But we also have this long relationship with a lot of the nonprofits because Weston is very much kind of the fabric of that town is a whole bunch of nonprofits woven in with these businesses. So I was just up there meeting with sort of a coalition of people working on, there's sort of the near-term mitigation piece, but then there's the how do we get to where we have the real resiliency plan where everything kind of hangs together. And that's probably going to end up being sort of a collaborative thing. And we all have to sort of be on the same page because that's not going to be just a planning thing, right? That's going to be like a planning thing to get at another level. So yeah, we all have to be talking to each other because, the Weston Playhouse situation is right next door to the general store that might or might not sell out. And we all kind of administer or are involved in programs that touch each other. So, yeah. And sometimes it's simple and it's like, well, that's your thing and that's our thing. And sometimes it's like, oh, there's no solution. And then really what we are there to do is to try to say, hey, whatever you're doing in Barrie, right, this really kind of ambitious thing, that's what needs to be happening here. And how do we make sure that it can be both Weston and Londonderry, especially given that they qualify for different things because they're in different counties. I mean, so it's on the advocacy side, we have kind of a slightly different role also. Yeah. And it just, another example is we have this thing called this CAP program that we invented, actually worked with Maggie Foley a couple of years ago to come up with this idea to say, sometimes town plans leave off without an implementation matrix. And that could be super helpful. And so, and it can be hard to structure those conversations in a town. And so we've gone in to a few towns and just done this like fairly straightforward but project prioritization process. We're saying we're neutral parties. Like we just want to help you structure a conversation where you say, our town plan says we really want to keep people aging in place. We really want young families. And we've got 50 projects we're talking about. How do we start to line those things up and then look at all the programs that are available to fund things or support these and say, what's likely, what's most impactful, and then, kind of just figure out some next steps on each of those things. And so we have a looser relationship to planning, which actually gives us a little bit of freedom in a different way, right? Because we're not there doing an official town plan, and we're not there, as like your kind of, I'd say like regulatory agency, but we're not, we're different. We're a nonprofit. We don't have the same role with regards to specific programs and conservation, things like that. We can just be like, let's just have this loose conversation. That's really the pre-development step before you would then say, oh, okay, now we have to call up the regional commission and say, we want to use that MERP program or, one of these other things so that we can get this thing done. So, yeah.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, thanks a lot. And we've got this and.
Yes, I'm going to email you with
All right.
digital.
All right, great.
Thank you.
All right, Jen, thanks so much. Okay, we'll move on then, folks, to old business. And this is, we have two, I think we have two this evening.
I don't see David, but Carol's here.
Yeah. All right. So we'll start with, we're listening to folks talk about tax exempt properties, bringing us up to speed about what's going on, because all of these organizations will be on the ballot at town meeting to reapply for tax exempt status. So Carol, you want to come up and talk to us? Yeah. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Just identify yourself.
I'm Carol Schnabel, and I'm on the board of the Guilford Recreation Club, and so is Ellie, who is here. And yeah, I'm here because to talk about our club, but we have, through the way you apply, we have tax exempt status, so that's what we have, and we want to continue it. But our biggest project for the last year has been finally doing the upgrade to the tennis courts. We got a grant from the state about 2 years ago, and it was a matching grant, and we matched it from funds that we had raised. And then it turned out, with all the costs of everything going up, we were short of what the actual project looked like it was going to be. And so we came to town to ask for some ARPA money for the difference, and you all awarded that to us, and we were very grateful. And that was all we needed to get going. And so LaRock's did the bulk of the work, mostly in June. They got most of it done somehow before all the rain started. They worked between, and then the second part of finishing resurfacing of the tennis court got pushed later, and then the weather pushed it even later. But we now have a completely resurfaced, relined tennis, basketball, and most importantly, new to us on the same spot, pickleball court. And there's been just such an enthusiasm when people heard we were going to be adding pickleball to the choices up there. And people, even before the lines got painted, were able, because we put the net up, we're able to use the court already, and the basketball hoops are up. But now the lines are all on. And the rec club also owns the ball field, which gets used for a number of kids and adult sports, and it gets used by the Guilford Fair, and we collaborate on things, the two organizations. And we also own the log cabin, which is, very, very well where that is.
Yes.
And some hiking trails are part of our property, and there's a little picnic pavilion up there. And one thing I wanted to mention before I get back to the pickleball was that the Guilford Rec Club started in 1949, and it was put together by a couple of really generous Guilfordites who donated the land, which is approximately 15 acres, and then about a couple of hundred volunteers who worked to get the ball field going. That was the first part of the project. And it's been, you know, the generosity of Guilford volunteers and donors all these years. And we, you know, hope to continue for a long time. And back to the project with the ARPA funding. So we haven't quite completed because of the rain delaying the final work that was done this fall. There's still a little money left in our budget to do some extra things, and we're gonna do those in the spring because it's too late now. And so we wanted to check with you while I'm here to see what the town needs as far as reporting for our ARPA money, because we want to be responsible for whatever we need to do. But, you know, it is usable already and people have been using it. And so far we haven't heard of any big, you know, challenges of scheduling. Sometimes I guess pickleball is so popular right now that some of the courts are having a lot of challenges of just making sure people get their time. But,
Is there a schedule building mechanism?
well, we're thinking, one of the things we're thinking about is just some signage which will encourage people to basically
Share.
yeah. I don't think we're gonna have to, you know, we do have people, if they wanna use the log cabin, they have to get in touch with us because that's a locked building. But for the courts, anyone's welcome to be up there when it's available. And if there's somebody waiting, the whole hope is that the people who are on there are considerate and, you know, look at the time. Yeah, so we might have some guidelines posted once signage is one of the things that's waiting for spring. Yeah.
I don't think there's any, certainly we're not required by the federal government to require any updated reporting from ARPA organizations that grants are made to. We have to file a report, and unless they've changed their guidelines,
Yeah.
but as far as I understand, I may be wrong, but as far as I understand, there's no need for reportage. So if your projects are able to be completed and you can, and you have other things you want to do, go for it. Yeah.
Well, we're very grateful for you because you put us over the top, and we got some generous donations too that weren't expected. And so, yeah, so we can do these few extra things and then consider it,
Okay.
a successful
Okay.
completion. So.
All right, any questions for Carol?
Oh, I don't have a question. It's more, I'm really glad that you mentioned the origin of the Recreation Club, because sometimes people ask what the distinction between the Recreation Club and the Rec Commission is. And I mean, the groups obviously collaborate,
Right.
but I mean, my understanding is that the Recreation Club is really focused on the land that you were given and the activities that have grown around that.
Well, exactly, and the Recreation Commission people are aware that they're always welcome to use our property, but we're property owners and we have expenses related to being property owners, and we have to take good care of it. So, we try to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
So,
Appreciate it.
do you guys want to hear the article that is proposed to be added to town meeting?
Sure.
They're all the same for all of the.
All right, we won't be approving it though necessarily.
No,
But
it's
we look,
just-
nice to hear it, like, yeah. let's-
Shall the town vote to exempt from taxation for 6 years, dates, the real estate owned by the Guilford Recreation Club, which in this case is 2 parcels, parcels 687 and 698, and there's a statute. And so all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these will read the same, have the same language, but the Rec Club and the Fair Association can be for 6 years, and others for different numbers, 4 and 5 for other groups.
Seem all right?
So they don't all come up at once.
Right.
Yeah, we got this
Yeah.
unusual year where they're all coming up at the same time.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So the Recreation Club is an actual landowner, and then the Guilford Fair also?
Yes.
Association?
Different.
So you're neighbors?
We're neighbors,
And-
and we,
they're-
like, when they have the fair going on, they use our ball field and,
Yep.
yeah, for some of their activities, and I dare say they'd let us use their things.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Hello, Dave.
I'm supposed to come up on the hot seat now?
Yeah, now we're gonna hear from the Guilford Fair Association. How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to come and request that you exempt the fairgrounds from taxation. I think we do a pretty good job of putting on a fair, and we also do support youth services with, or it's HCRS with summer camp. We rent it to them, and we do trunk or treat. And the recreation club has been doing some winter programs where they use the fairgrounds, and it's always open for people to use to walk their
So
dogs.
whenever anybody wants to have like a wedding or something, they contact you folks, and you rent it to them?
Yes,
Okay.
they contact Maureen Daler, and she's the contact person for that.
That's a good.
I was for years, but my wife said that I really wasn't the right person to be talking to about weddings. I wasn't sentimental enough or something.
Well, I want to be really clear that it won't be the select board that will be deciding this. We'll be
Putting it on the board, on the
Putting it on
agenda.
the ballot.
That's what I want you to do. is
Okay.
Put it on the agenda then.
Yeah, and then they put it on the
And
ballot.
support us.
Yeah, and we will, I'm sure.
I think it's a valuable asset to the community, and most of the community organizations have fundraising events at the fair. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I was wondering, some people who were new to town said, wow, the Guilford Fairgrounds would be great for having, musical, major musical events. Do you get a lot of requests for sort of big stuff at the fair?
The Stone Church in Brattleboro is starting to have concerts there.
And an annual thing.
Pardon?
I think it's an annual thing they do.
Yeah, they just signed up for one this coming year too.
Uh-huh.
I suppose it hasn't been, but it's only because I'm running the fair. I fire for a living, so I don't have a lot of extra time to look for other activities to do there.
Uh-huh.
And, we charge a very modest rate, especially for local residents and for weddings and things like that.
Mhm.
What's the size of the lot there, Dave, approximately?
About 27 acres, 26 and a half, 27 acres, I think. It includes all the fields up to the road. We own the big barn that's falling down, and we'd love to give it away. And then there's another little shed a little further down that belongs to the house across the road. There's a little garage there. And
You mean which shed? Sorry?
there's, I think there's either 2 or 3 overhead doors further towards the schoolhouse
Uh-huh.
that goes with the property across the road, Stone's place.
That goes.
Oh,
across
I
from
know
Stone's?
what you
That's
mean.
That goes
Yeah.
with Stone's place.
I thought it was still with the house.
The
Yeah, I know which it is,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, right on the road.
Neil
Yeah.
Stone.
Okay, yeah.
Not Neil Stone,
Paul.
Paul Stone.
His son.
Oh, okay, his son,
Yeah.
whoever owns the house, and then it was,
All right.
yeah.
Any questions? Any further questions for the Fairgrounds Association?
Just thank you for another amazing fair.
Fair Association.
Everybody.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks so much. All right, see you.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, so then we'll move on to the next order of business on the agenda, which is just an explanation here that the town has received a decision from the Superior Court in the suit of Jason Herron versus Guilford. And I just want to let everyone know that, the community know that we have received that since the last select board meeting. And the court decision at this point was to dismiss the case entirely. So what happened was our attorneys, when we received the suit, we sent it immediately to the town's attorneys, And the attorneys then have a number of steps that they can go through that are assigned legally, and they chose to request dismissal of the complaint or the suit, and the court determined that yes, the case could be dismissed, and so that's what happened. In the suit, there were four. Jason Herron submitted 4 violations, and the court goes through each one of those very carefully, explaining the situation, and also explains that under normal circumstances there would not be a dismissal of a suit. That under normal circumstances, in most cases, there's no reason to dismiss a suit. But he went to some lengths to explain why he's dismissing this suit. So now, just so we all know, Jason Herron now has 30 days to appeal this suit to the Supreme Court. And if he does not do that within 30 days from the date that the motion or the decision was filed, then the suit is considered dismissed. So that's how that stands. Just want the community to know that's where that stands.
Oh, I had a question.
Yes.
So is the court's decision a public document?
I was wondering about that myself. I'm not sure that it is. I think it probably, I don't know.
Maybe it would become, I'm making this up, but maybe it would become a public document after the time
After the
to
third, that's what
file
yeah.
an appeal would be, just out of discretion.
Yeah, well, I think it's not, the case is, although this court has dismissed the case at this point and won't consider it, it doesn't mean that a higher court wouldn't. So
Okay.
even though it's dismissed at this point, it's still in active play until after the 30 days. So we were also advised by our lawyers that if there are any new suits or any other issues that want to come forward, they have to be entered as new suits against the town. It can't be that accompanying information could be taken into the Supreme Court in line with this suit. You can't add more information. So the information, in other words, the Superior Court would be looking at this decision, not new information as the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would be looking at this decision from the Superior Court, not new information. So we'll wait to see what happens in the next, at this point it's about 15 to 18 days. We'll see what happens. Okay. We'll move on then to new business. And here we'll talk about the notion of a Guilford Conservation Fund. And I think that for a little background, we'll hear from Linda Hecker first.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a discussion and potentially some action. Thanks, Linda. Want to identify yourself?
Yeah, hi, Linda Hecker, the chair of the Guilford Conservation Commission. And Erica, could you get up that presentation? I took the liberty of helping myself organize and make sure that I covered all the points the Conservation Commission wanted to make, making a little PowerPoint that summarizes the information. And me too. So great. So that's just
Maybe you can shrink the other thing for a little while. Well, you can.
great. Probably you can maybe move that over, I don't know, but if not,
Can you just drag it from there? There you go.
yay.
Yay, how's that?
Okay,
Good.
so if you go to the first real slide, that's just the cover slide. So the Guilford Conservation Commission has discussed the possibility of setting up a conservation fund for quite a long time, but it seems like right now is the time to actually try to move this forward, and that's for 3 reasons. The biggest one is that money is finally officially available from the Save Sweet Pond Fund that people donated to back in 2011 when Sweet Pond was, the dam at Sweet Pond was taken down by the state, and I think most people know about that event. And they the normal course of action would have been to take the dam down altogether, but the people, local people, so valued the resource, the recreational and natural resource of Sweet Pond, that there was an outpouring of fundraising and support, and we established the Save Sweet Pond Fund to try to convince the state that we, people in town really wanted to have the pond restored. And it was effective in that the town did eventually decide on the and they told us on the basis of seeing that money, which was a kind of a really material expression of how much people wanted the pond restored. And it was always with the intention that the state would use that money, and they never did. So it took about 8 years to restore the dam. That was 2018. The dam got restored. They did the recreational enhancements. And ever since then, I've been trying to get an official word from the state about when they were going to take this money. And it turns out never is the answer. And it's probably just because it was, I don't know, too complicated for them. The money did its affected, had its effect in convincing them, but they never accessed the money, and so we finally have their go-ahead. And there's about, well, I'll talk about that, how much money is there. So that's reason number one, is suddenly there's a pot of money available for the town of Guilford, and the Conservation Commission thought about what would be the best use of that money. Second, the natural resource inventory was just completed, and it identifies the priority areas in town for conservation. So we know where we would like to be able to conserve land. And then thirdly, we're really at a very critical point, I think, in Guilford and Vermont's history, where there are conversations about how do we preserve the rural character of our town, which we all value so much, at the same time providing affordable housing. And while we're having that discussion, the Conservation Commission feels very strongly that we would like to identify the areas in town where we don't want to expand housing, where it's more beneficial in the long run to conserve land, fields and forests and agricultural land. So that's the why. So next slide. So the Sweet Pond Fund, it's been sitting in a town fund since about 2012, gaining about, I don't know, 25 cents in interest a year, maybe at most. But it's now got over $6,600 in it. And we would posit that it absolutely achieved the intentions of all the little, donation. The biggest single donation was $100. It was mostly $25, $10. We got the dam back, we got the pond back. And so it's now available to help preserve what locals really have always loved about Guilford. And about conservation funds, so next slide, Erica, thank you. So the Conservation Commission is by statute able to establish a conservation fund, and that's the chapter there, because of our statutory ability to receive money, grants, or private gifts from any source for conservation purposes. But of course, we would like the approval of the Selectboard in establishing a conservation fund. And it's a little murky, but I think we need the approval of the Selectboard to transfer the funds from the Sweet Pond Fund to the Conservation Fund. A conservation fund is designed to enable a town to either purchase property outright or to support conservation easements on land. And as I said, we're seeking your approval to transfer the money, and we are not intending to request any municipal funds for this. We want to put in the Sweet Pond money, and people in the past have asked how can they donate to conservation causes in Guilford. We would like to be able to receive donations of either land or money if people are offering it. So next slide. Oh, good. So conservation funds in Vermont are not just for, setting aside land that nobody gets to use. It can be used for agricultural preservation, forestry, wildlife habitat, scenic attributes, recreational use. And an important thing is that most land that is conserved is still widely available to the town for all the things that we love. Hunting, hiking, fishing, snowshoeing, those kinds of activities. And since the first conservation fund was established in 1974, over 25% of Vermont towns now have conservation funds. So there's a lot of history about how effective these funds have been in conserving land that towns consider valuable. Next slide. So only 6% of Guilford is currently conserved, which I think is a little surprising. It's a lot less than we thought, of which almost 2% is state land like Sweet Pond and Weatherhead Hollow, and another 4.5% by conservation easements by either groups or individuals, and we're thinking Guilford Preservation, Green River Village, Guilford Friends of Algiers, Green River Preservation, Sheffy's Meadow are all examples of land that's under conservation, but it's still just a tiny fraction of our town. Meanwhile, the state of Vermont has set goals of conserving land. You may have heard of 30 by 30, that it's 30% of the land by 2030 and 50% by 2050. There's a typo up there, it should say 50 by 50. So we're a very long way from that goal now, and we think it's prudent to have resources available when an opportunity might arise to conserve land that we know is ecologically important for our future. Next slide. And because the natural resource inventory has helped us identify those lands of high ecological diversity, they include parcels in Old Stage Road, Roaring Brook, Owl's Head, Belden Hill, Governor's Mountain, East Mountain areas. So we know where we would like to be able to conserve land. And then the final slide. Okay, so the wonderful quote from the Association of Vermont Conservation Commission says, "A local conservation fund shows a town's collective commitment to protect what citizens value about their town." And the most important thing about a conservation fund is that it grows money in the terms of matching funds. The money itself would never be enough to buy property, but usually it has like a 6 or 10-fold leveraging effect in being able to put together grants from foundations and private sources and things like the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And it will help us advance our town goals, which are in the town plan of conserving ecologically important land. And what it does, it helps towns really focus on what they consider the most valuable. Might not be what the state conservation, like the Vermont Land Trust, it might not be so important to a statewide organization, but something like Sweet Pond, which turned out to be really important to local citizens, we were able to conserve it by showing that citizens really cared greatly about it. And the most important thing about having a conservation fund is that when land or property comes up for possible either purchase or conservation, often you have to act quickly. And having the money there enables you to make the first steps and to try to engage other groups. So that is why we are asking now for the for your sanction in establishing a conservation fund.
All right, Linda,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Are there any questions folks have for Linda?
Oh, I have a question.
Then
Yeah.
we want to have a discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So is the idea to start that if a landowner were thinking of getting a conservation easement on their land, that they could apply to this fund for sort of seed money to help them develop a plan?
For the legal expenses
Yeah.
and the process, yeah, that's one of the possible uses. Another possible use is we might be able to have funding from, say, the Vermont Land Trust and the River Conservancy to actually purchase land outright, like like the what was the junkyard on the
Right.
Green River, which has been purchased outright and is now available for the whole town. So it could serve a variety of purposes, either to help fund the conservation easement process or to actually buy and steward land.
So I have a question.
Yes.
As there are two other organizations in town that are concerned about conservation of land or whatever, has the Conservation Commission talked about the possibility of what are some of the future visions for being able to work with these the other organizations that already exist? It seems there's a potential danger of having too many organizations doing the same kind of thing, and where do
Well, do you
lines
mean
get
like
drawn?
the Friends of Algiers?
Yeah, Friends of
or-
Algiers, or the what's the one that the
Green
Green River Preservation? Is that the name of it?
Well, there's the Green River Preservation and
and then
also
there's
Guilford
Guilford
Preservation. Yeah,
So actually there are three, right?
right, but those are groups of individuals who've already conserved land.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Yeah.
but they
But
also
they
have,
wouldn't help other organizations, they wouldn't help other individuals or organizations if say, additional land came up. They're not in a position to help them acquire a conservation easement, whereas we see that this fund, that's what this fund
that's
is
what could
able to do. But of course, we would want to cooperate
Mhm.
with other organizations, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a commission.
Right, it's a
Yeah,
community.
so-
It's a statement from the community, is what it would be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, let's see. Are there? Then we'll open it up here.
Can I, or?
Let's wait just a minute, Ellie. We'll hear from you because we are going to take an action. At that point, we'll do it. All right, that's when we would open it up for community discussion. So, do you have anything you want to say, Erica, about this?
About this, well,
And also, I want to thank Erica for doing a lot of research about the
yes,
statutes.
so, but not quite enough, I don't think. So Linda's presentation was very good. Statutorily, conservation commissions can receive money, grants, private gifts from any source, and also gifts of land. So that is something that falls within the Conservation Commission's purview, certainly. Linda also provided some documentation from
Oh, right, thank you, I forgot
from
all
the
about that.
state, who are these folks? The Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, saying that they do not want to use the Sweet Pond Fund. And
And they blessed,
Yes.
they supported the idea of conservation.
yeah,
Conservation.
And also all of the people who were on the original Safe Sweet Pond Committee agreed that this was a valuable use for the funds that they contributed.
Right, it's impossible to contact the hundreds of donors, we don't know, we don't have a record of them, but
So in other words, what you're essentially, one way of describing it is you're taking funds that were donated for a particular purpose and reassigning them in a certain way, and you're asking the
Right.
select board to, the way you're choosing to reassign it, you're asking for select board approval on that. and
Right.
setting it up, So it seems to me that there are a couple of actions we could consider. We could, I think there's still more work to be done. As I understand the situation going forward, we're not ready to set this up and say, go and do
Right.
it all. Because I think we don't know exactly what it is we're setting up quite yet. And we don't know the mechanisms by which community members could actually become engaged with in giving. I mean, we see other examples of it. We know it's possible. So we need to learn some more. So I see that we could approve the idea of this. One action
Yeah.
could be that we could approve your proposal with some conditions, that we sort of go slowly here in a
Yeah.
kind of way, or that we would create a subcommittee here of the select board and we have a practice of doing that with a couple of people who would then do all the homework and come back with a proposal to the select board for an action at a later moment. I see either one of those as being possible here. Is there any other possibility people see at this moment?
I sort of feel like maybe we should just do our due diligence and contact the town's attorney and PLCT. I mean, it sounds like Linda's done a lot of research on this topic, but just to make sure this is all sort of
Okay.
workable.
I have been in contact with VLCT about this, and they recommend that it, going through the select board, be voted on by the town to set up a new fund. I'm not sure they understood the question exactly as it is, because conservation commissions do seem to have a little statutory wiggle room that other commissions maybe don't have, or committees especially. But that was what VLCT recommended. Just setting up a new fund should go to the town.
Yeah, the Association of Vermont Conservation Commission says that's the usual route, but it's also possible for conservation commissions to set it up on their own.
So it seems to me that there's a range of possibilities here. The Conservation Commission could do this on their own and inform us what they're doing. Then the select board could could get engaged by approving the situation. And we could also take this notion to the town to see about whether or not we need to, the town should adopt the measures of setting up this kind of practice in the community, because this is actually kind of a big deal. I mean, there are communities that have, community forests or whatever, town forests, or they have whole tracts of land that are set aside for certain purposes.
Yeah.
And that could become a possibility in Guilford's future. And so if the town thought this was a good thing to do.
Right, and Erica had also mentioned a line item in the budget, the fund transfer. That might be another way, if the select board approved, but there's still, I think you said, in the first email, you suggested the best way forward might be to have a line item in the budget for the transfer of the funds.
So the select board, I do believe, does need to approve that
Yeah,
particular thing
right.
about the sweep fund,
Right,
yeah. So
right.
I think we've got a good amount of documentation about the purpose of that money
Right.
here, so. Yeah, I'll have to go back
So
and check that.
it seems to me that, if I hear you correctly, then Erica, it sounds to me like one action we could take this evening is to just approve that we could put on the table the notion that we could move to make this transfer of funds. That presumes that there is setting up this.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and we may be jumping ahead of ourselves in a
Right.
certain way, so we may want to hold off on that. I think I'm going to take the step of proposing, just so we can manage this for the select board, that we actually appoint a subcommittee to just help the staff and staff help. I don't want the staff to have to do this all by themselves. They're
Yeah.
already completely overworked as it is.
Yeah.
But if we had a couple of, and I'd be glad to be one of those select board members to move this conservation fund topic along and then bring it back for the board's consideration at a future meeting. You know?
I'd be willing to participate.
All right, Michael, thank you. So I will move then that we appoint me and Michael as a subcommittee to further this, to do some research and then come back to the select board about how this could all work. All right, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Brenda. Now, Ellie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah,
Identify yourself though.
I'm Ellie Biden, I'm the treasurer for the town of Guilford. Erica shared some of the information that you presented, Linda, and I thought your PowerPoint was great.
Yeah.
I really am interested in the idea of conservation. I've worked on that in my farm in Guilford, Connecticut, and we have a conservation easement with the water company down there, and to maintain that, I think it's 15 acres in perpetuity. But when I was reading through your information, being the treasurer and nitpicky person I am, I kept wondering about structure.
Mhm.
What structures are you gonna need to carry this out? I know the Conservation Commission is robust and really gets stuff done, but the decision-making that would have to take place in order to purchase property, like, would that be the bailiwick of the commission, or would it be the select board, or would it be somebody else?
Mhm.
Would it be better to have the Conservation Commission set up as a nonprofit or stay part of the town? I mean, and, you know, if you purchase property, who owns the property technically? Is it the town of Guilford? Because if it's the town of Guilford, then it has to go in our insurance policy for liability.
Mhm.
So I'm not trying to kill the idea, but I'm just trying to think of, you know, maybe we need to look at the structure, maybe some different possibilities of structure that might work and get the job done and, you know.
Right, and I think because 25% of towns have these funds and have used them, that there's lots of precedent.
There's
for-
model out there for
Figuring
us to
this
check.
out,
yeah.
And that would be some of the research
Yeah.
that subcommittee could do
Yeah.
to learn about what might work best
Yeah.
in Guilford,
Yeah.
something like that.
Exactly.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Doesn't
As
mean
a
we don't need
major-
an answer, but
As
we'll-
a major land user in this town, open land user, one of my son's biggest concerns is all our landowners are in their 60s and 70s, some in their 80s. And the future of the open land is really critical to our farming operation. And I don't know, you know, if there's a way, a lot of people are in current use, which
Yeah.
reduces their property taxes, but you know, my land is not yet in conservation, but I'm thinking of going that way.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's a way to try to keep the open land more open
There is, and actually.
through
Yeah.
through the Conservation Commission in order to,
Yeah.
you know, I see people buy properties and plunk a house right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Right, and,
And,
yeah, no.
you know, but, and then, you know, there's one landowner I have that he asked me where he should put the solar panels, and I told him where, but the state wouldn't let him, because I mowed it once and a flower grew, and they had never seen the flower before or since. And the day the guy came, it bloomed, the goddamn thing. So it's not where ideally it would be in a spot that was too wet to hay. You know, and I could keep it open all the way around it.
The Vermont Land Trust has programs where they buy a conservation easement, and they have a whole program for reaching out to farmers who are looking for young farmers, young families who
Yeah.
are looking for land, and helping them with the purchase price and the conservation work, helping them establish themselves. There's a really great, in every newsletter that they write, they have specific examples of those kinds
Yeah.
of new farmers coming in, yeah.
But we use a lot of other people's land
Yeah,
throughout town. And,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a real question for your livelihood.
right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah, no, it's a good question for all of us, yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah. Ellie?
I just want to throw out there that, again, I'm part owner of a farm in Connecticut, but my brothers are looking to the work that's being done in Vermont with farmers and conservation to get his answers about how we should do things down there. So I think it's interesting that we're considered a leader up here in this area.
It's Vermont. A lot of times it's just the case, yeah. Okay. Is there anything else anybody here on the select board wants to add at this point? Okay, so let's go ahead and vote for this this motion, which is that Michael and I would serve as a subcommittee to continue the conversation and bring back a potential recommendation to the board at another time. Tara, are you in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Rusty.
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And so it says aye. Okay, thanks very much. All right, now we
Okay.
move on to, thanks a lot, Linda.
Thank you.
And we'll move right on ahead to the EMD ARPA request. How are you, Dan? Good. Want to identify yourself?
Sure, I'm Dan Ingold. I'm the Director for Emergency Management for Guilford.
All right. So what we have here is we've all looked at a request. Our normal procedure for all these ARPA requests is that we form a subcommittee to look at it and talk it through. So we won't be making a decision tonight about this, but probably at the next meeting we would be able to. That would be our goal.
Sure.
But is there anything you want to tell us?
No, so, well, yes. So we had a volunteer organizational meeting in October, very well attended. We had 14 to 16 volunteers, which is great, all showed up. Several things came up. One is the need for training, so I'm working about getting resources for training for the different tasks that will be assigned. But the other thing that came up is relative to about communication. And that when we have a group of people that need to communicate with each other, we have a weather event, to be able to do that. So to be able to have a method of communication. Cell phones sometimes don't work, they don't work at my house. I'll tell you right now, Consolidated Communications, God bless them. No phone for the last 24 hours at my house. So the idea is that we've had 4 satellite phones, which, the fire chief, assistant fire chief, myself as EMD, and then Danny had. And that's fine, that was great to have that as a backup. But I really felt after coming from this meeting that the idea was we need more communication devices for the task organizers and managers when we have an event. So the idea was let's reduce the number of satellite phones, keep 1 for the town at a central location that, if we need to reach out to the outside world. But the communication between all of us is very important, and to our neighboring communities. And to do that, the idea of using the same sort of radios that we're using now, both for the town and now for the fire department, which is both the digital band radio, that's what we need. So the idea was just similar to what the fire department was asking for their type of radios, to start collecting radios, securing radios for use for the EOC and its members. So the idea was to, not go out and buy 20 radios. We don't have a budget for that. But the idea was that we could purchase 2 radios for the EOC funds that we have, and to look for using ARPA funds for purchasing 2 more. And then every year we'll keep adding another 2 out of EOC funds. So I just think it would be better for communications, and looking by reducing the 4 satellite phones to 3, we're going to get a savings of close to $3,000 a year. So it's a more pragmatic approach. So that's where I am with that.
Great. Well, I think that what we can do right quickly is just appoint a subcommittee to look at all this and then come back to the next meeting with a recommendation. So,
I'll be on that committee.
thank you, Brenda. Is there another person? Rusty? Okay, great. Thanks, you guys. So then I will take the task of moving that we appoint Veranda and Rusty as the subcommittee that will review the situation on behalf of the select board and come back to the select board, hopefully at the next meeting, with a recommendation about whether or not we could spend this, award this $11,000 to you guys, okay? The EMD. So that's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, fine. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any further discussion at the select board? I think we'll just go ahead and vote then at this point. Tara, do you approve?
Aye.
Thank you, Tara. Rusty?
Aye.
Michael? Miranda?
Aye.
Zon says aye. All right, thanks very much. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. All right,
Thanks
thank you
for coming in.
Dan?
I
Nice
will
to see you.
be in touch.
Good.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, we're slipping by, we're postponing the personnel payroll increase issue for another time. And so we're gonna have a discussion right now about mailing ballots to all voters in Guilford. So I'm gonna turn this part of the discussion over to Erica. Thank you.
Okay, so this was brought to my attention by Danielle, our town clerk and election official. The Secretary of State's office says that the select board has the option to mail local ballots, and this is just for town meeting, to all voters. So that is what is potentially being considered right now. The caveats here are big ones. The ballots that are mailed could only be Australian ballots, therefore they could only have the candidates that are running for positions like select board, school board. That's all that could be on these ballots that would be mailed if the select board chose to do that. Danielle believes, and I agree with her, that that would create confusion just to mail a ballot, which is not really the whole thing to everybody. If, of course, everybody could still choose to request absentee ballots and they would get those ballots, but they would not get a ballot with the town meeting articles on it. They would just get the candidates. And so it seems to Danielle, and I agree, that just going ahead and mailing ballots to everyone would create confusion and be wasteful of resources like stamps and things like that. So the select board does not need to decide if they don't want to do it. If they did want to do it, you would have to make that decision. But the future elections that will come up this year, this decision is not affecting them. It's just part of the guidance that Danielle got from Secretary of State says you cannot mail ballots for the presidential primary to all voters. That is not allowed under the statute. But for state elections, the November general election ballot will be sent to all active voters by the state. That's not local level stuff. There's another element to this year's voting, which is, it's not really new, but they're making a point to let everybody know that voters must declare what ballot they want in the primary, Democratic or Republican. And you cannot mail both ballots to voters. That's more of a state level thing too. So what we're talking about right now is just the Secretary of State's office has let us know that they would appreciate a decision by December 1st, I think, if the select board wanted to mail these limited ballots for town meeting to all residents or all voting residents, that the decision would have to be made soon. So my recommendation is not to do that.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just state what I think we can do as a select board. We can just have talked about it, have no motion appear on the table, and that will do what Erica is recommending. Or we can have a motion to actually mail the ballots and then vote it down. Or have some sort of motion to not do it and vote that through or whatever. So, but I think that unless there's any strong feeling here at the select board, I think we should just let the discussion pass by. If there are any questions, we can try to answer them for anybody, but I'm not inclined to move this myself.
Sounds great.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I'll give a minute or just 10 seconds if a select board. Tara, if you wanted to raise this as an issue, or I mean as a motion, but I think we'll let it go by otherwise, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks. Okay, thank you for that very much. Then we'll move on to Wyndham Regional Commission grant opportunity that Erica alluded to earlier in her report, and we're going to hear a little bit more about it, and then we'll have an action.
Great. So this is something that I'm requesting the select board to approve moving forward on. I wrote a memo, and I'll just read a little bit of it. In recent meetings between Dan Zabreski, myself, and Colin Bratton from Wyndham Regional Commission, Colin has suggested that Guilford apply for one or more state grants to assist with highway infrastructure projects. Wyndham Regional will assist in completing these grant applications, which is wonderful. Thank you. And so he's identified this one particular one, it's a municipal highway stormwater mitigation program grant, which doesn't have an upper limit, it's federal money, but it does require a 20% town match. And the application deadline is December 8th. But the awards will be announced in the spring. So we put together the application and then we wait. And in the spring, if we are awarded the grant, then the select board can decide based on financials if they want to approve that, to accept it. To accept it, yeah. This particular project that Colin and Danny visited the site on last Monday, would be, there's a large culvert on Slate Rock Road, which is, the condition is judged by the state to be poor. And in 2022, there was a hydraulic study done of the culvert, which puts it in a good position for grant opportunity. So that and maybe possibly some photos that Danny is looking for of when it washed out in the past will be part of the application. So the construction would go out to bid, and it would be following state and federal guidelines. And one thing to note about this project is that any proposal would have to include some way for people to get past the construction while it's going on, because Slate Rock is a very narrow road. So Danny is very well aware that that would have to be part of it, and he's put that in every communication that we've had so far with Colin about it.
And so Danny is strongly in support of going forward with this.
Yes, because it would just be very helpful. This is a very large culvert. So the match could certainly come from our capital fund. And it would just be very helpful to Danny's overall projects.
Well, stormwater mitigation is the name of the game in
That's
3
right.
seasons.
Exactly. Yeah. I would like to just point out that I think this particular opportunity, it's not exactly like our run-of-the-mill grants that we get. It's in the ballpark, but it's not exactly like it.
That's right.
And so I think that what we're seeing here is an opportunity that has appeared before us, and there are lots of these. Sarah Coffey tells us there are lots of these opportunities out there for us to start learning about. This is a chance for us to learn about how these opportunities work, get our hands a little bit more in the same in the same sink or whatever with the Wyndham Regional Commission, who will help us do a lot of these kinds of grants. And this is the kind of opportunity that I think is in Guilford's future if we want to take advantage of it. So I personally am very much in favor of this. I think my understanding is that what the select board needs to do here is if we want to do this, is we would authorize Erica to move forward with this and understand that in authorizing her that there's no commitments of doing anything except applying for the grant. The acceptance of the grant comes back to the select board at a later date because it will have budget implications that we'll need to review if we're awarded something. Is that clear to people? Makes sense? Okay.
I would make a motion that we authorize Erica to pursue this
Thank you.
grant opportunity.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rusty.
And I have a quick question. Is this an example of the change in bylaws that WRC adopted so that this is their Guilford version, but that they're bringing together a bunch of communities that have parallel needs?
I wouldn't say exactly, but I think they're practicing for how this is going to work down the road.
Yeah.
And I think that this is, as you know, Guilford has set aside some. Whoops.
Somebody's dog.
Guilford has set aside some funds for a grant writer, the ARPA funds for a grant writer, with the notion that we want to kind of work with the Regional Commission along this line. So I think we're all moving toward this in a good
That's
way.
great.
Yeah. Is there any discussion from anyone else? Okay.
Do you have enough time to get the application completed?
Yes. Colin and I are on top of it. It's not a really long application, so I think we should be able to do that.
Good. Thank you.
Connie is asking to unmute.
No, I think it's,
no.
that's just our, thank you.
That's-
All right, so we'll take this to a vote then. Tara, are you in favor of this?
Aye.
Thank you. Rusty?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Zon says aye. Thanks very much. All right. We'll move on. We are going to postpone section F, which is the FEMA update. We can do that at a future meeting. And it will have, it will be more appropriate at another moment, I think. So we'll move on to G, letter of interest for regional policing project. Again, a topic that Erica alluded to in her report. And do you want to explain? All right.
Sure, so as part of Mark Anderson, Wyndham County Sheriff, is very active in trying to figure out better solutions for people for towns who are involved and could potentially be under his care as with policing services. Guilford does not currently contract with the Wyndham County Sheriff's Office for any law enforcement services, although we are aware that people would like that to change. Mark's suggestion is to, sort of like we do for the animal control officer, which has a group of, I think, 10 towns, 9 or 10 towns, that all signed up for the animal control officer and therefore make it a cooperative contract. And I think it's working well. The particular animal control officer that they have is wonderful and responsive to all of these towns. Obviously, law enforcement would be a little bit different. And so Mark is looking at some draft legislation to ease up restrictions on things like funding from the Wyndham County Sheriff's Office does not actually get funding from Wyndham County to do law enforcement.
Because there are no taxes that we pay to county, so there's no mechanism for doing it. Yeah,
that's right.
Has to come from the state.
Yeah, but I don't think that is exactly what this. There's just all these nuances that some could change via legislation that could help enable this community policing thing to really blossom, and that seems like it would probably benefit Guilford. And so I've written this letter of interest to Mark, and I'm asking for you guys to approve just sending it. It's not in any way like signing up for anything. There's no financial obligation here at all. It's just a letter of interest so that he can say, look, these towns support this idea of a regional policing pilot project. Putney and Westminster are already involved in a collaborative thing that they're doing, and I just learned that at this meeting last week, but I haven't heard neither one of those towns was there, but it seems like a lot of other towns are interested already, so.
So this is an advocacy step that we're taking at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a commitment to any kind of program or anything.
No commitment.
So I would move that we authorize me to sign this letter of interest that we could forward to Mark, and then he could use it in developing a program, which then he would come back to with us, we'd review at a later moment. So is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Thanks, Rusty. All right, so is there any discussion, any questions?
Do we have any indication or notion of what Mark's sort of ideas are how this new model is different than what they've done in the past, or?
Well, I think it's gonna be structured a little different. At this meeting that I went to last week, he was talking about possibly even making it something that had a regional board, kind of like DV fiber almost. So a lot of oversight and benefits to multiple towns. So that definitely sounds like something that will require legislation. Yeah, he's happy to come and talk to us about this too.
Yeah, and I'll just say to that, as I understand work with like DV Fiber, one of the reasons that you would collectivize the thinking and sort of organize it in that way is for funding that might be available at higher levels that you'd have access to, which in the current standing, it's clear he doesn't have access to funding except to appealing to towns. We know, he's already told us how much it would cost per hour. We can budget that if we want here in Guilford to get policing services. I think he's looking at other opportunities that might pull down support dollars that would be able to actually support something like this. So it would, the onus or the cost wouldn't be shared only by the towns that are involved. And he's looking at
He also suggested that he might try to set up a meeting of multiple towns to talk about this and give his presentation again, rather than going to however many towns there are in Wyndham County to give his spiel. So that might be something that's planned in the not too distant future.
All right, so I think we'll take a vote. Are we in favor of authorizing me to sign this letter of interest so we can explore this further with the county sheriff? Tara?
Aye.
Okay. Rusty?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Zana says aye. All right, I will sign this. Thanks very much. All right, now we're probably going to need Ellie maybe at the table here to talk a little bit about these transfers out. The next thing on the agenda.
Really?
Yeah. So we have on the, this is just so the Selectboard and the community can understand a little bit about these moments when we are transferring huge amounts of money from one place to another. I'll just start by saying that all of these transfers are issues that that have been already approved by the town's voters as the budget's been approved, and these decisions have already been sanctioned by the community. But still, it doesn't, because these are big dollars, it doesn't hurt for us to understand a little bit about them. So you want to explain a little about what's going on?
Well, I wasn't really planning on making a presentation, so I'm just not feeling too great, so I'm just going to sit back here.
Okay. All right.
So as you said, some of these are all of them are transfers that have been approved as part of the budget during a town meeting. So one, for instance, is the $225,000 that goes. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's. Can you allow me to just run in the other room and get the journal entries?
Sure.
Let me do that. That would be easier than trying to run through.
She'll be right back. This is
Okay.
just the budget status report.
Yeah, so these transfers will show up in here?
Yes, they will.
I ran this report after the transfers were done.
So one thing that was included in the budget and has been for several years is the $225,000 that goes from the general fund into the capital fund. So that's one. Another is the money that gets moved to the HRA account. So money comes out of the 003 general fund, and money comes out of the highway 009 fund to go towards the HRA. So the HRA is part of our health benefits.
Okay.
Another is the voted on highway budget. So the money comes out of the 003 general fund and goes into the highway budget. So that's a transfer of $887. $887,000, excuse me, $689. So there's another big transfer. There is another transfer of $60,000 that goes, let's see, from the highway budget, the 09 fund, to the bridges fund, which is the 011 fund. So that's another big chunk of money, $60,000. Then there's the annual $12,500 that goes to the Green River Covered Bridge Fund. So those are some pretty regular transfers, and those all get voted on. They're in our budget that's presented each year, so.
So they are in effect already approved at this point, yeah?
At this point, they're already approved, so all I have to do is follow through with
Okay, so we're
what,
just
what's been
acknowledging that
approved.
here.
Yes.
I think it's worth noting that on our current warrants we have, there's one that's going from into the education fund
That is
of
one.
almost $4 million.
Yes, $3.8 million, which is going to leave our general fund and go towards the education. And that revenue comes from your tax bills, from the homestead and non-homestead education rate. So all that money needs to get transferred to Wyndham Southeast School District. So, yes, that's a big check.
Okay, so that's just in preparation a little bit for the warrants.
Yes.
We're gonna be doing here. But thank you. Is there anything else? Anybody have any questions about these transfers or anything? Well, I anticipated that there might need to be an action that the select board might need to sort of just secondarily approve or authorize this, but I think we're okay to leave it let it stand because it's already been approved in the
It's already
budget.
been approved.
We don't need to take any action then.
That is correct.
All right, so then, thank you. But can you stay for just a second more?
Sure.
Yeah, the next one on the agenda is the penalty. We have a proposal to reinstate the penalty for late homestead declaration. And it's a proposal that comes from our assessor clerk, Guilford's assessor clerk, Lisa Berry. And in fact, it's by statute. If a taxpayer does not file the homestead declaration, there is a penalty involved with that.
Mhm.
And through a number of circumstances here in Guilford, for the last few years, that penalty has not been sought, has not been collected.
By the town. It is
By the
collected by
town.
the state.
Yeah, it's collected, so we pay for it, but it's not being paid for through.
The individuals pay for
Right.
it for late filing, yes.
Right, exactly.
But the state keeps it right now.
Yeah.
But
So,
the town can't take it.
So there's a proposal that we would reinstate, we would follow the statute, in essence, we would reinstate the practice of following the statute. And I think the question for the select board here is whether or not we want to, whether or not the select board wants to reinstate that statutorily required practice, rather than let it sort of slide, go by.
Can I say something?
As soon as we get it, so I'll move that we accept this proposal, that we take this recommendation from the assessor clerk, and that we reinstate that policy. Is there a second? Rusty, thank you. Now, sir.
So Lisa told me about this idea last week, one of those. And I can understand that it could be financially a good idea. We might be able to take in 15,000, maybe. I don't think she's really thinking about what that's gonna do to my position, which is, if I think of how many people actually did not file their homestead declaration on time and were upset because when they did, the homestead rate is higher than the non-homestead rate, so their taxes increased. So that was something I dealt with, which is okay. But if we're talking about now putting a late filing fee on top of that, and on top of the, the 8% we already put on for people who are late, yeah, there's probably going to be a little more heat in my office, which again is not a problem. But I think if we're going to do this, there needs to be very clearly advertisement that we're going to do this, and advertisement about the fact that you are by law required to do this, to file your homestead declaration. And if you get an extension on your filing your income taxes, it does not mean you have an extension to file your homestead declaration. And it's due by April 15th. So if you don't file it, it's a long string of consequences.
So
if you
if
vote
we-
in favor of it, it's just something I'll have to do, and but
If we
I'd like to think about it.
If the select board voted not to do this, if we didn't approve what we just moved, does that mean that the state would take care of this issue?
The state's, as it is now, yes.
So the state will just implement and we don't, and we would receive the funds. The state just does it, and they get the 8%, or who gets the 8%?
Well, let's clarify one thing. It's
Penalty.
not necessarily 8%. It can be up to 8%.
Up to 8%, okay,
Okay.
all right.
We have an 8% penalty, which is totally separate from the homestead declaration late fee.
Yes, all right, so
Totally separate.
that's late filing taxes, yes.
Right. In terms of, so right now, the state deals with the late fee for the homestead declaration late filing. They tack on a penalty. I've seen it on a few people's letters that they get from the state. So the individual is paying it one way or the other, either to the state or to us.
So if we did it, we would get the money. The state's keeping the money now, correct? It's not theirs.
Yes.
So if we did it, we would get the money.
So
If we can, yes.
there's a little bit of incentive for towns to do it with the notion that there might be some money in it for the town to point this out to folks who haven't filed properly.
Well, let me ask about balancing out staff time.
Yes.
How much of the treasurer's staff time would be taken to chase down these people and get them to pay up relative to the amount of money that the town would get, more than if the state handled it?
What I'm seeing here in the figures that are supplied to us is that in the year that the town has received the most penalties, or could have received the most penalties, it was a little less than $15,000. In years when there was just more people were paying, the lowest amount would be, it would result in $4,000 or so. So I would say somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000 a year might come to the town of Guilford because of late fees, and whether or not it's worth it for us to ask Ellie to do that for that amount of money.
Well, I would hope the goal of whatever we do is actually to get people to pay on time.
Right.
Not to collect the money.
File on time.
To file on time.
Yeah, it's not
Not to
about,
collect the money.
it's not about, yeah.
Right, so, I mean,
I agree with that.
in terms of setting it up, as Lisa said, it's pretty easy to set it up. But, just this year, this is my first year doing tax bills and the whole 9 yards. We had so many downloads from the state from people who were late filing past October 16th. So every time somebody late files, or files late, then their bill gets revised. you have to send them a revised bill. And then usually you have to send the letters because they call you up anyway and say, why is this a revised bill? Why am I paying more? You know, so it's like, oh, you late filed. And because of that, you now have your Homestead Declaration and you're paying a higher rate of taxes. So, I mean, it's this, you know, I could put it on a recording and probably play it. But it takes time. But I think it takes time regardless of,
So
either way.
How are people notified that they're obligated to do this now?
Obligated to do what?
To pay this?
You mean to file their
file.
Homestead
To
Declaration?
file, yeah.
It's part of your tax process. I know like TurboTax says, file your
Right.
Homestead Deck. It's something that folks should know what to do. And if they don't, then they hear from me or Lisa or someone and say, you know, you were supposed to do this. And people who use folks, you know, accountants who are out of state often don't file because they don't know what's a requirement for the law. And then there's that whole thing.
And if you file for an extension,
Yeah,
It doesn't change the date.
it doesn't change the date that the Homestead Declaration is due. It still needs to be filed.
and if you use one of the online or, you know, TurboTax or anything like that, you can file for an extension that way, but none of them are going to tell you that you need to file your
Right.
homestead anyhow.
So I think education is a piece of this.
It seems like, yeah, if we're gonna make the commitment to take this proposal, we also need to make the commitment to education.
Right.
So, and it's one of the things that I've been thinking about. as far
Doesn't it
as the
say in
sort of-
most of the forms that you must file by April 15th on there, your homestead? I think it
April
does.
1st?
Yeah, but some people don't know that form exists. That's the,
But it's right on your tax return, I think on all
oh, is
tax
it like
returns. Yeah, it's
a
there.
94?
So I
I
mean,
wonder if a mailing, postcard to everyone in the town might be helpful.
Well, that's a form of education.
It is a form of education, but I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
we have opportunities, like, I was just writing the treasurer's letter to go in the town report, and I was like,
Yes.
that's one of the things I put in there. You know, we can put it on the website, we can bring it up at town meeting,
We
we
can
can
put it
bring
in
it
the
up at
Gazette.
pre-town
Gazette.
meeting, we can put it in the Gazette, like, in multiple places. Because how many times do you have to see something before you actually
27,
notice
I
it?
think.
At least, at least.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's like 38. So I hear all this and I'm not clear how I would want, what I would recommend at this point. Does either of the staff members have a recommendation to the select board for this? Are you,
Well, Lisa's clearly got one.
she's
She
a
has
staff
one.
member with a
Yeah.
recommendation.
She
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, and I can understand Lisa's point of view,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, she's doing her due diligence to show the town where we can both follow statute better and where we can also have a chance of earning some income, if, a little bit, not as it's not a money source or anything like that, but it is, there's benefit that would derive from that, financial benefit.
And at the same time, the mop-up for this is challenging, especially at a time when we know our staff needs additional help to do the work that they already have in their work order.
Yeah.
And this is an increase in,
Well, not right now.
well,
It
no,
would be
but
next
it
year, it's
will
out a
be.
year or so,
Yeah.
or 6 months anyway.
I mean, it's an interesting question. What kind of education really works to get people to get out of, fear and loathing about taxes or denial or something like that, that would just make it more approachable for people just to learn, just do it. And that's, it's too bad some of our educators have already left because I don't know what would help. A PowerPoint was very clear, but
Maybe sometime in March, we could invite somebody to go through a, whatever it's called, HS 122. Is that what the Homestead Declaration form is? And just have, it open to whoever wants to come. And they can sit and do that.
Seeming a different approach, yeah.
You can also, and we can also just put a box of forms on the front desk, and anytime somebody walks in, starting January, you say, take one of these, because you gotta get it done.
I have in my calendar to put a notice on the front of the website on January 1st that homestead declarations are due.
We should throw it on
And
the front
maybe
porch
what
first.
is a homestead declaration?
Yeah, exactly. What will it do? What's the point of it?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, without filing a homestead declaration, you can't get any access to a state payment to, subsidize your taxes. So, I mean, I think that's a big thing for some folks.
Okay, so how do, we just need to take a vote, I think, and see where this falls out and see what
Gosh, I'm
happens.
confused
It's a little
about how to
confusing,
vote.
but yeah. So the motion is to approve or accept the proposal of our assessor clerk to reinstate the penalty for homestead declaration, meaning Guilford would manage that rather than, it would become a Guilford managed issue rather than a state managed issue. That's what's on the table. So let's see how this goes. All right, so I'm gonna, Tara, I'll ask you first.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, all right. Can't have all abstentions. I guess it goes nowhere. Well, we guess we could do that, yeah. All right.
Aye.
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 All right, Miranda?
Okay, I guess I'll vote aye.
Okay, and I'm going to vote aye as well. All right, I think we'll just do it this one time at least. We'll do it and see what it looks and feels like and find out what it means for us, and then we can revisit it if we need to. Okay? Thank you very much. I mean, I'm personally incredibly aware of the stresses and strains that our staff are under right now. And I want to just acknowledge the incredible amount of work that you guys are doing for the town, all of the employees are doing. And it's not our intention to just be dumping, I don't think, on you.
Oh, I don't
But I think that we want to just make sure that we're trying to cover our bases well.
There's one other aspect here that Lisa would like approval on also. The last paragraph of her proposal, which is, it's something different, but it is related to what we were just talking about. She has the opportunity to work with the state on she says the huge number of non-filers in town. And this is non-filers of the Homestead Declaration. Her chart says that there's 34 that filed it late this year, and that's where the penalty would come from, but she says there's over 100 people who simply don't file it. They don't file it late, they don't file it at all.
And they should.
And they should, because that's a state law. And in the case of Guilford, if you don't file it, then you get to pay the non-homestead rate, which is lower than the homestead rate.
Oh.
Which, yeah. So there's a state program for Lisa that Lisa can engage in the spring when she's doing all her other assessing work. And she can provide a list of about 30 to 40, she says, non-filers, because she knows who's filing and who's not filing. And she knows who lives in their house generally. She has a lot of this information and who doesn't. Because she goes on a tour every spring and checks it all out. And so if she files a list of non-filers with the state, they can just turn on the homestead declaration for those folks without them doing it. And then they would get a late filing penalty, and then they would get to be paying the homestead rate. And so that would be sort of taken out of their hands if Lisa knows them to be non-filers. So that's another thing that she was just asking for.
You mean that we have to take a vote?
Well, she requested that, yeah. I don't think that's necessary, but.
I think there's a lot of
there's a lot of extenuating circumstances around taxes and complications and accountants being super busy and not being able to do people's taxes. And I feel like that's just micromanaging. And I don't know. I think that's like getting into people's business just a little bit too much, and that people need to be responsible for themselves. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're getting at here is that even though these programs exist and they're statutorily required, there's no enforcement of them. And so this is the state attempting, at least is seeing a situation in which the state is providing a way to enforce it, but it requires someone overseeing that and actually doing that work. And that's, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Tara. That was my kind of first reaction, that wow, somebody can just go flip a button and, and this is going to happen. But I think
If it's the law
if it's the law
that you're supposed to do this,
right,
to file a homestead, I don't think we can just go and flip a switch. I mean, because there's no process for listening to that individual about, as Tara was saying, about their situation or what's going on. You can't just bypass a process, like a legal process, can you?
well, it sounds like she can. Sounds like the state has a plan for that.
The state has a plan, but this isn't happening until the spring, so we could revisit this.
You know, I think I would like to, personally, I'll just say that I would like to learn more about this before we say yes or no to this. I don't feel like tonight I know enough. I mean, these are good questions, and I feel like it'd probably be worth asking Lisa to come and talk with us more so we can ask her questions about this.
And again, I think that's gonna fall in my lap.
Exactly, yeah, so,
Yeah,
And the Board of Abatement, probably.
And the Board of Abatement, yeah.
I thought that when I heard about this last paragraph before you read what was on it, I thought it meant that Lisa was gonna just call them up on the telephone and say, perhaps you've forgotten, but this is what has to happen.
Now she would be calling the state and saying, here, she's a little bit like, it's a form of tattletelling.
Well,
But the thing is, we all have to do it. I don't see why some people shouldn't
Exactly.
have the right to not do it.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think
They're still getting penalized by the state if they don't do it.
No, they're paying less because they're not paying the homestead rates. They're paying it.
They somehow slip. It's like almost like a crack that and some people probably figured it out. If we don't do this, we're going to get a lower tax rate. They probably figured that out.
so let me just understand this and have it be on the record. So the reason why people would not, a reason why people would not file this is that they would be pretending that they didn't live in their homes, that it wasn't their primary residence, and therefore they didn't need to contribute to the support of the town at the same rate that people who did live here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll go ahead.
I mean, not just forgetfulness.
There's not a lot of requirements after you don't file your homestead declaration. They're not gonna ask you to fill out a form every 6 months to prove that you don't live in your house. It's not like.
But you do have to file once a year.
You do have to file once a year, but they're not gonna check on it except for this program that Lisa's talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see in COVID why this question would come up, because there are a lot of people that probably do have second homes in Vermont, and they sort of were using them as second homes and not bothering to file the homestead because they never did, because it's their second home. And suddenly during COVID, they're living here more, and they just find out and then they just don't think about that step, or it doesn't hit them or something. And so suddenly now they're Vermont citizens, and they didn't quite ever make the real step in a certain way, this final step here. I mean, I can see where lots of people it would go that way for a lot of people.
I think we really need to sell the benefits of the homestead also.
Yeah.
You know, like the possibility of the state payment, there's also other programs like
Right.
the current use program. And
Right.
there's other things that could be of benefit to you if you do the
So,
Homestead Declaration.
all right, in the interest of moving forward, so I'm not gonna move anything, I'm just gonna propose that we talk about this at another discussion with Lisa, the last paragraph, and have more questions and take a little more time another time. Does that seem okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. Tara, are you in a position to lead us through the warrants this evening?
No,
All
I'm
right.
not.
Miranda? Good
Okay.
night.
Okay.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much.
Okay, I move that we pay the following warrants. Payroll week 11/19/23 for the sum of $7,055.96. Payroll week 11/26/23 for the sum of $7,623.58. Expense warrant 2410 for the sum of $3,845,616.15 for a total of $3,860,295.69.
I'll second that, and is there any discussion?
Well, as we heard before, the 3,845,000, et cetera, is paying the education fund that we had heard. And I don't know, Tara, I don't know, Erica, whether there was anything else particularly obtrusive.
Nope, just
Just the usual.
diesel, gravel,
Yeah, diesel and
Winter
gravel.
costs.
yeah, winter,
And maybe a
winter,
little insurance.
new tires for winter.
Okay, so I'll take a vote for approving these warrants, approving payment of these warrants. Tara?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veranda.
Sure thing.
Rusty?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Zon says aye. All right, thanks very much. Okay, we will power through other business. I don't think there is any this evening, and I've received no correspondence that I'm aware of for the entire select board since the last meeting, so I think we're clear there. Bear with me here. Actions from the previous meeting are that we approved minutes of October 26th and the November 6th meetings. We defeated the conflict of interest policy changes. The select board did, I should say not we, I wasn't involved in it, because I wasn't here. So the select board approved tax sales at the last meeting. The select board canceled the December 27th regular meeting of the select board. And the select board approved warrants. That was at the previous meeting. Actions taken this evening were to appoint a
Approve the minutes.
Thank you very much, Miranda. To approve the minutes, we approved the minutes of the previous meeting. We appointed a subcommittee to address issues around the establishment of a conservation fund. We appointed a subcommittee to deal with an ARPA request from the emergency management director. We authorized Erica to take next steps for a Wyndham Regional Commission grant opportunity. The select board authorized me to sign a letter of interest for a regional policing policy project, we heard about transfers out, and we made a decision to accept the major portion of a proposal from the assessor clerk for reinstating the penalty for late homestead declaration filings, and we also approved the warrants. So I think those are the actions for tonight. And seeing all of that, good lot, folks, I would accept a motion for adjournment. Thanks, Veranda.
I'll second.
Rusty will second. When you take a voice vote for that, Tara, willing to adjourn?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Rusty?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
All right, Veranda?
Aye.
And Zon says aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.